Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the marketplace. Coming up, Bank of Ghana justifies recent policy rate hikes, insisting it has helped slow down the rate of inflation.
In terms of our monetary operations this year, it has been very effective. But when inflation, we are convinced that inflation is firmly on the downward path, we will begin to recoil policy.
Also coming up, prices of petrol and diesel likely to increase averagely by about 5.7% beginning tomorrow, August 16, for the next 2 weeks.
Indications are that Ghanaians may pay more for petrol, diesel, and LPG. For petrol, you are looking at about 3% depending on the OMC.
And Ghana profits from Niger airspace closure as number of flights surge. We'll bring you details. My name is Daryl. Thanks for being with us. Details coming up. Thanks for staying with us. First up, the Bank of Ghana has justified recent policy rate hikes, insisting it has helped slow down the rate of inflation. Now, since July last year, the policy rate has increased 6 times to the current rate of 30%. Now, some have questioned its impact, especially with the recent marginal spike in inflation to 43.1% in July. Dr. Philip Abredu-Otu is Director of Research at the Bank of Ghana.
Uptick that you saw was purely food-driven. It had nothing to do with monetary policy.
Then we don't need a policy rate hike.
Well, but the thing is that is why the central bank came out with a measured increase in the policy rate. And that is why we saw a 0.5. The thing is, if you don't take care, this small uptick could feed through to non-food prices and create problems for you down the road. So it's very essential that you take steps to act now and forestall any future pressures that will come along the line. And George, in terms of our monetary operations this year, it has been very effective.
What does the data tell you? Is the data giving you that numbers? Because when you engage businesses, when you engage certain actors in the economy, they still think that this tool is not effective because government operations,
why is it not effective?
And all George, the rest, inflation is going up and all the rest.
Well, but George, in the recent survey that we had of businesses and consumers, they seem happy that
your policy measures are working.
That some stability has returned.
Targeting is working.
That some stability has returned on the exchange rate front. And I think, should this give assurances to business, some businesses were optimistic about the future. Because, George, you are always talking exchange rate on your shows in the morning. It's a key critical indicator. Businesses, we don't share the very insights of all these surveys that we do.
But I think that
we do report the headlines. But businesses are optimistic. I think it is interest rates that have gone up slightly as a result of our policy measures that we've taken in the past. But they will begin to come down. For those who borrow to do their businesses, yes, it's a little bit biting, but when inflation, we are convinced that inflation is firmly on the downward path, we will begin to recoil policy.
Well, on Zoom with us is Dr. Jaber Mohammed, a banking and finance lecturer at the University of Professional Studies, Accra. Good afternoon to you. So, question is the Bank of Ghana to blame for rising inflation? Critics accuse the Bank of Ghana of financing government's budget instead of insisting they are disciplined and then consecutively increase the policy rate.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon to your listeners. Well, Bank of Ghana might be blamed a bit due to the increasing amount of financing that they give to the central bank. If you look at 2022 budget, the Bank of Ghana financed the government to a tune of 42 plus billion Ghana cedis, and which was, according to many experts, most of it was through printing of money. to finance the government of Ghana deficit. If you look at the losses that the Bank of Ghana made, the losses can quite be attributed to the printing that the Bank of Ghana did in 2022 to finance the central government deficit. So quite clearly, you will notice that because you have increased the amount of money supply in the system, there is more money in the hands of people. And for that matter, what is going to happen is going to be quite inflationary. So the Bank of Ghana can be blamed in a particular way, because if you increase the quantum of money in circulation, the replica effect is that it's going to be inflationary. So that is the kind of inflation that we are seeing as we are observing today. And if you look at the losses that the Bank of Ghana made recently, that is about 60 billion Ghana cedis. How are we going to finance the losses that the Bank of Ghana is making? And it will surprise you to know that in monetary theory, when a central bank makes losses, one of the effective ways to finance the losses is through inflation. So we are going to see more inflation as a result of that.
Nobody wants to hear that we are going to see some more inflation, but I mean, on the part of the central bank having to finance the government, is it in the position, does it have what it takes to reject government's plea of financing? And then again, the Bank of Ghana has argued that the policy rate hikes are needed to help check demand-driven inflation. Do you foresee any shift in its stance as we continue to see the uptick? And what are the risks if the central bank continues to hike the policy rate?
Well, if the central bank continues to hike the policy rate, it's just going to be increasing the cost of financing business operations. So because it's going to increase the cost of doing business. As the Bank of Ghana increases the policy rate, it increases the Ghana referencing rate. So when Ghana referencing rate increases, the banks will lend at a higher rate to businesses, and the cost of doing business is going to go up. And as you know, if the cost of business goes up, that is going to feed into the pricing strategies of businesses, and that comes back to the inflationary pressures. So like I told you earlier on, the losses that the central bank made, about 60 billion. If you look at last 2020, the Bank of Ghana made a profit of 1.6 billion. In 2021, the Bank of Ghana made a profit of 1.24 billion. So if you average it, on average, the central bank is making a profit of 1.42 billion. So if they made a losses of 60 billion, it means that it's going to take them close to 43 years to be able to recover the losses that they have made. And one way to recover the losses, as I said earlier on, is going to be inflationary. So the inflations are more likely to hike. But I mean, let's see if indeed the central bank can continue to suppress the inflation through the money supply. I just listened to the director of research who says that the inflation is driven by food. Who caused it? Because there is so much money in the hands of the people, and the production in terms of food is low. So what happens? Prices are going to go up. If you look at the price of onion today, just for onion, they will sell it to you 5 Ghana cedis, which used not to be so. That's like the 1 cedi some time back. So, I mean, if you have more money in the system, definitely, and production is low, inflation is going to be very high.
All right, just hold on. I want us to listen to a sound bite from the Chartered Institute of Taxation, Law and Forensic Accountants Ghana, questioning government's attempts to achieve a single-digit inflation rate within the next 3 years. The Institute describes it as one that needs enough sacrifice on the part of government. According to its executive director, Eric Odro, a holistic approach to address the economic challenges is needed. We'll hear from him, and then I'll pick your thoughts.
Now, inflation rate is 42.5%, I read. And the government is trying to bring it to a single digit within the next 3 years. Very difficult because, 1, the export base is low. 2, cost of capital is high. 3, demand fraternity is not what promising. 4, the disposable income for Ghanaians are relatively low. 5, you could see that we are not export oriented, because the gold that we are even producing, we are touting to have added value. How much value is added? What is the benefit are we going to get from that aspect? But I'm hearing the government is trying to make sure that the aluminium smelting sector is going to pick up. But what mechanism, processes, abilities, policies have you put in place such that they will be able to contain the marginal increase, such that once the marginal increase comes, we are able to contain the revenue, and that marginal increase will curtail going to source money from outside. Until we do these things, I tell you that it's going to be what? Very difficult.
What do you think, Dr. Mohammed? We expected inflation to peak sometime this year, but we are seeing a reverse of that. And so, I mean, looking forward to a single-digit inflation within 3 years, as Mr. Odro points out, maybe asking too much.
Yeah, like I said earlier on, yeah, it's too much for a single-digit inflation to be achieved in the next 3 years, given the rate at which the Bank of Ghana has been financing the government of Ghana deficit. You recall that the Bank of Ghana, the government of Ghana is out of the international capital market, which means that they still have to be resorting to financing from the central bank. And that might quite be a bit difficult for the central bank to achieve its main primary objective of price stability. Because the primary objective is that they are supposed to achieve price stability, which means that they are supposed to have a lower inflation to be able to do so. So as you are having difficulty in even financing government of Ghana budget deficit, how are you sure that you're going to have the needed funding to be able to meet the inflationary pressure alongside meeting your own difficulties in terms of closing your budget? Because the Bank of Ghana is also in deficit. So how do you close that deficit alongside helping to close the government of Ghana deficit, at the same time managing price stability? That is quite going to be very difficult for the Bank of Ghana to do. But let's see what comes. If the economy can turn around, if the government can work very hard to increase revenue mobilization outside the Bank of Ghana, then we can say that that price stability can be attained, because the Bank of Ghana, the government of Ghana is supposed to also do something to maintain price stability. Price stability should not just be left in the hands of the central bank, but the government of Ghana should also look at its own fiscals. They should stop their fiscal misbehavior and work very hard so that they can close that gap that we are trying to look at.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Jabir Mohammed. He is a finance lecturer with the UPSA. Well, let's switch to fuel now. Prices of petrol and diesel are likely to increase averagely by about 5.7% beginning tomorrow, August 16th, for the next 2 weeks. The price of liquefied petroleum gas is also expected to go up by about 11.9%. According to the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, the expected increase is due to the 11% rise in prices of finished products on the international market and the about 6% surge in the price of crude oil. Here's Executive Secretary of COPEC, Duncan Amwa.
The second pricing window for August commences tomorrow, and indications are that Ghanaians may pay more for petrol, diesel, and LPG. For petrol, you are looking at about 3%, depending on the OMC. For diesel, you could be doing about 6-7% increase. Again, for LPG, you're also looking at something in the region of 8 to 12%. These are numbers we pick up as of today.
Aviation now, and stakeholders within the aviation space are calling for massive investments within the industry to expand the capacity of the sector. According to a fellow at the American Society of Civil Engineers Committee on Airfield Pavements, Engineer Leslie Alex Ayer, there should be a broader consultation to sanitize the operations of air transport in Ghana. He spoke to Joy Business.
You know, Ghana has a good record in aviation, and what we need to do right now is to maintain our reputation and build on it. And we have a very good record in aviation circles, and I think this is an opportunity to let it be better than it is right now. Currently, in order to meet the capacity, you have the Terminal 3, and since COVID, COVID just disrupted a lot of things. And since COVID, traffic has been building up, and we have a lot of confidence. A lot of airlines are flying to Ghana. Ethiopian used to do 7/7 one flight. Now they're doing 10. The other airlines that are coming in, they want to increase. British Airways is increasing its operations in Ghana, and I think the United and the Emirates, they all want to follow. So we should have our infrastructure should be able to cope with it.
All right, we'll still stay with the aviation sector because there appears to be a silver lining after Niger closes airspace following the military coup. Managing editor of aviationghana.com, Dominic Andrew, joins me on Zoom to shed some more light. Good afternoon to you, Dominic. So he's actually on phone with us. How exactly is Ghana benefiting from the closure of Niger's airspace?
Hi, good afternoon, Daryl. So the closure of Niger airspace means that mostly flights from Europe will have to reroute the flight. Ordinarily, they will fly over Niger. It may be a shorter distance to some countries in West, Southern, and Central Africa. However, now they have to avoid that and then fly through Ghana, then connect through Nigeria, other Central African countries, and Southern African countries. How we are benefiting is that before they fly, of course, they fly their flight plans, and then they pay for the overflight charges. The overflight charges is $150 per single application to the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority. So, in as much as traffic is increasing, flying over Ghana into other parts of Central and Southern Africa, we are also making some gains in terms of the overflight charges.
Can we handle the pressure?
Yes, I think we can, because the Ghana Association of Traffic Control Officers, they are very active on the ground, though their shift or their time of working has increased, but they have indicated to me that they are very much on top of issues, and then they reschedule their time to ensure that they're able to handle the pressure. The Accra FIR, Accra Flight Information Region, is divided into east and west. So the western part is what we handle, the eastern part is for Togo and the rest. But for Ghanaians, we've been doing it for years. In fact, we train the other eastern part. So they have a lot of experience and they have the manpower to be able to handle this new development.
Well, but still, travel has become longer in the region because of the detours and rerouting, right? And airlines would have to spend some more on fuel.
Exactly. What it means is that we anticipate that in the long run, the price of airfare will go up a bit. This is because, let's say you are flying a Boeing 777, and it will have taken you 6 hours to fly from Europe to a destination in West Africa or Central Africa. Now, if you have to do a detour, and it takes you about 7 hours, that's 1 hour more flying time. That 1 hour more flying time requires between 3,500 and 4,000 more fuel. I mean in gallons, I'm talking in gallons. So you need 3,500 more gallons to fly the same distance you previously used to fly, simply because of the detour. That additional 3,500 gallons of fuel, at yesterday's prevailing rate of 1.92 for aviation fuel, it comes down to about $6,000 extra operation cost. So if your operating cost has gone up by $6,000, it means that you pass on to the consumer. You can't keep absorbing those losses. So any detours, any increase in flight time, it's a cost to the airline, and ultimately will be passed on to consumers.
Right. I mean, last week when we spoke, I mean, there were reports that some European carriers had cancelled flights because of the initial challenges. I believe that, I mean, with Ghana serving as an alternative, that has changed slightly, hasn't it? Or even more?
With Ghana, none of the European carriers ever cancelled their flights. The likes of Brussels cancelled their flights to Luanda in Angola, because they have to do so many detours, and looking at the flight time increases and the rest, they thought temporarily, let's suspend it and let's see if things get better so we can do. Brussels is very strong in Francophone West Africa, and if they have to do all those detours, the cost of operating will go a bit much higher, so they were looking at those dynamics as well. So they have temporarily suspended, but the rest are operating all right, though they have to do detours here and there, but they're operating all right.
Okay, continue to watch that space for us. Dominic Andrew, Managing Editor, aviationghana.com. Thank you so much for speaking with us. You're watching The Marketplace. Some 5 managers and supervisors who were picked up by the Data Protection Commission will be made to face the law. According to the Commission, the matter has been transferred to the Attorney General's office after they were arrested Monday afternoon, and prosecution is expected to begin. Meanwhile, the Data Protection Commission says it has engaged all defaulting companies about the need to register and be licensed with the Commission before undertaking the exercise to prosecute them.
Many channels through yourselves, the media partnership, newspapers, seminars, webinars, roadshows, workshops throughout the period between 2018 and now. We've taking practical steps to reach out to data controllers, cooperate with them, engage them, write letters explaining their duties and responsibilities to them. Whenever a defaulter comes on our radar, we take steps to explain to them. Again, we have offered training courses, certifications to put professionals in the Ghana ecosystems. As at today, we've trained almost 1,000 professionals, and we've placed them in key public sector institutions and in some private sector, the large private sector institutions, to help them build and implement their internal privacy programs. There's a framework by which you can ensure that you are being accountable to us, the public. We teach them, we give them the tools, and we support them to do that. So recently we put out a public notice, and before the public notice we had notified about 250 non-complying data controllers by letter, quoting the section 56 of our act, saying that if you are a person who is supposed to comply, you have failed to do it, you are breaching the act, you're failing and non-complying with the law.
All right, joining me, my colleague Isaac Atase Nyako. He's joined us from the Joy Business Newsroom, and we had a discussion about this morning, and wondering really if individuals understand what is happening and are concerned about it. What do you think?
Well, thank you, Daryl, for having me. Well, when we talk about data, protection, I think it comes in various facets. First of all, you may want to look at, let's say, business to business, when, for instance, a regulator, let's say BOG, can, enforce this or these directives on their entities under the regulator. So, for instance, all financial institutions, fintechs under BOG, it's incumbent on BOG to be able to ensure that, data of customers are protected and are not used for things which will more or less favor the bank against the individual. Also you can look at institutions like the Electoral Commission. You can even look at the NIA, where they sometimes contract third parties. So for instance, the NIA can contract third parties or a third party in the collection of data, for instance, and also in the processing of data. So all of these parties in this process do have some form of responsibility in making sure that data of individuals, data of citizens are protected. And so it more or less comes in a sort of like a two-way street thing. But what we are looking at, or what the Data Protection Agency has been doing since yesterday, is to clamp down on businesses who are flouting these laws. So we look at the individual to business relationship where, for instance, I go to a bank, I give them my credentials, and when I breach or I flout the terms, they decide to put out my details, my picture, my name, my buyer details, and they think or they believe that doing that will enforce people who breach contracts will be able to pay. And so this is what has been happening. But it expands. You can even look at the internet, and especially now with emerging technologies and all of that, and what people are doing. But Daryl, I always say that when it comes to data and data protection, the individual is key. We walk into places and people ask us to give our buyer details, our phone numbers, our contacts. We need to be able to ask questions. Who is handling these information we are putting out, and what is it being used for? Yeah, in that era where data is one of the most expensive things, if not the expensive, commodity. And so everybody is trying to, fight for, a piece of the pie, as it were.
And just in a minute, we know that government plans to make Ghana a data hub with the building of several data centers. So what risk does the internet pose?
Well, it's a very critical issue here, and if we remember a couple of years ago with the Kingdom Analytica incident with Meta, then it was Facebook where, you know, it was sued after they realized that a part of the data of users of Facebook, not only Facebook but other tech companies as well, have been sued over the past years, you know, were sold out to other companies, and Meta made lots of money from these data. And so when it comes to the internet, when it comes to data, it's very critical. Then again, the positives. Now let's look at this. If Ghana is successful, imagine if we had a database of about the history of, you know, cocoa since, or for the past 50 years, for instance, first of the number of seeds, the yields, the number of farmers over a period of 50 years. Imagine what we can do. Now with emerging technologies like AI, which is largely based or largely driven by data, it's very important that we are able to, you know, keep some of these or start collecting some of these from entities, businesses, government especially, to be able to build some of these trusted platforms. However, that's where the risk lies, because then it's open and anybody can hack, and other tech companies can also buy into it.
We've got to go. Isaac, thank you so much. I'll catch you in the newsroom. .com/business. Bond market, total market turnover declines 98% to 4.81 million Ghana cedis. More on myjoyonline.com/business. We are back same time tomorrow.